Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name's Semicolon. Welcome back. And today we're going to be taking a good look at Inscription. Obviously, we're in the war within now. And so professions are my forte. And I started up a series just a few days ago, kind of taking a deep dive into every profession, at least that I'm going to be working in. And we started with jewel crafting. And so today we're going to move over to Inscription. So the expansion at this point's already been out for like 8 days, I think. So a little over a week, which has given me a good opportunity to kind of dip my toes into Inscription and see what it's all about. So first things first, I'm just going to kind of run through all the different recipes so far, talk through what I think about them profitability wise, maybe looking forward down the road, how some of these professions might be or recipes might be profitable. So first things first, obviously we've got milling. Milling, I've already found, is definitely profitable. So just for example, the other day I milled 1,000 of each herb, and it cost, well, I don't know the exact numbers, but ultimately, after just milling 1,000 of each herb, I made like 55,000 gold off of the pigments. So milling just in of itself is lucrative right now. Now, some of these things obviously come with, like, if you're going to be milling, make sure you have a resourcefulness tool, resourcefulness enchant. Try to get some points into resourcefulness within the knowledge points trees to kind of further increase the amount of profit you can make from milling. But again, that's a good example. Milling's something that is very base. You get that right out the gate, and you can pretty much start making some money with milling immediately. So that's a great one to do. Taking a look at inks. So in Dragonflight, we had I think we had 5 different types of ink. In Dragonflight we had like 5 different types of ink, and War Within we only have 2. We have Shadow and Apricot. And there's some slight differences between these 2 inks that I've found. So kind of the first thing I want to mention is right now I've only found that Apricot ink is profitable. Shadow ink is not. Even if I were to use the pigments that I got from milling, so I would have a cheaper price of the pigments than buying it directly from the auction house, I'm still not finding that it's profitable. But I think that may change down the road. But Apricot ink has been profitable for the most part, especially if I price adjust the pigment cost to my price from milling. So when we look at Apricot ink, the thing that I want to highlight is just some of the different recipes that we'll see with Apricot ink versus Shadow ink. So we can see a lot of the missives have Apricot ink. Now these are combat missives, and then we have treaties. It looks like we have about half of the treaties. Potentially, yeah, looks about half the treaties. And those are kind of the 2 main things. Obviously, Boundless cipher is one. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Boundless cipher at this point, but we'll certainly touch on that. And currently, it looks like Vantis runes are going to be Apricot ink, and some of the contracts. And then if we look at Shadow ink, we're going to see that a lot of the profession missives are going to be using Shadow ink. The other half of the treaties are going to be Shadow ink. And then, we have, the PvP gear, some different contracts. So about half of the Inscription recipes use Apricot and half the Inscription recipes use Shadow ink. And so I think the main reason that Shadow is not up to par with Apricot ink right now is just because all of the combat missives are the ones that are kind of flying off the shelf. And then on top of that, Boundless cipher uses Apricot ink. And so again, that's why I think Apricot is far and wide better than Shadow ink right now. But I do think that once people get to a point where they have enough artisans acuity to start purchasing custom profession tools, we're going to start to see that shadow ink is rising in price and becomes profitable pretty much all the time. Maybe there's some times right now where shadow ink is profitable, but for the most part, from what I've seen, it's not. But I don't think anybody's really ordering custom profession tools like the rare quality where you need to buy a missive and potentially get recrafts to get the max rank. So once we see that start happening, I do think that the shadow ink is going to increase in value at that point. Additionally, I suppose moving on to the reagent aspect. So we have codified greenwood, and I think this is very akin to runed writhe bark from Dragonflight. We can see that some of the rare quality profession gear within Inscription uses the codified greenwood, but again, people aren't really crafting this gear right now, and so codified greenwood has also not been really profitable at all, and so right now it's not really worth crafting. But I think that once again people start crafting their custom not PvP gear, profession tools, we're going to see the codified greenwood increase in value as well. And then on top of that, people don't have sparks yet, so they're not getting epics crafted. And once they start getting epics crafted, the codified green one's going to skyrocket in value as well. And then, next we have Boundless Cipher. I kind of hinted to this earlier. Boundless Cipher right now has been a huge moneymaker for a lot of inscriptionists. And that's simply because it's the base kind of ingredient for combat missives. And then all of the treaties also use Boundless Ciphers. And so there's a lot of reason to purchase combat treaties and or combat missives and get treaties made right now. And so we're seeing a massive market for just the Boundless Ciphers themselves. And I think Boundless Ciphers can kind of be akin to, what's it called? You know what? It's been too long. Chilled Runes. I think Boundless Ciphers are akin to Chilled Runes. So not that necessarily means anything, but I just like to draw parallels in my mind. And so, yeah. So Boundless Ciphers right now, definitely a great thing to craft if you are able to. And, I talked about this a lot in Dragonflight, and coined the term like craft the crafting materials you need to craft. I think some people might just refer to that as shuffling, but I think it's a little bit different than like your basic shuffles that you think of, just because there's sometimes, like 4 layers to it. You're kind of like an onion. So if you can, again, craft the crafting materials you need to craft, you can really increase the value of the Boundless Ciphers that you're crafting up. Obviously, we've got weapons, nothing new here. I'm not really going to be touching on weapons or crafted gear, at least anytime soon. I might eventually go into, after I've used all of my knowledge points for, what I do want to use it for, I'll probably start putting knowledge points into profession equipment and maybe eventually crafted gear, but not really interested in doing that right now. Moving on, combat missives, very similar to Dragonflight. I have been making a very pretty penny off of combat missives so far in War Within. So that's another one that I would just recommend if you are able to craft it, look into it. Make sure you go into simulation mode and assign the best materials to achieve the highest rank. And also be mindful of what you're using concentration on when you're trying to max rank something. There might not be many people looking to buy rank 3 combat missives right now, and so they might be a high value on the auction house, but looking at it at the particular missive, you might see the sell rate is only 2 a day or something like that, which is remarkably low. So be mindful of where you're putting concentration. I know, especially with combat missives, it can be enticing to use these because they have been the rank 3s have been very high priced, but you just might not see many sales with that. In terms of profession missives, So I did use 150 artisan acuity to purchase the multi-craft one, which I ultimately am pretty happy about. I think I've made a good amount of money off of the multi-craft missive so far. So definitely something to potentially look into if you're wanting to expand the number of recipes you have. Now, I will say, with that being said, I'm not super psyched that I spent acuity on this recipe because, you know, when the expansion first launched, I was kind of going into it blind, and I didn't really consider the fact that there was going to be knowledge points purchasable with Artisan's Acuity, and so I kind of wasted like 300 acuity buying a couple of different recipes, which I should not have done. But it is still making me money, so I'm also happy about that. So kind of a, you know, weigh the pros and cons. Looking at just common quality profession equipment, I have been crafting this when profitable, and it sells pretty well. So profession equipment is potentially something that you could look into using concentration on to get the max rank. Might not be a bad idea. So yeah, I mean, just something you're going to have to scan the auction house and check. So looking at treaties, I'm going to be completely honest. I have not done a single treaty for another player so far this expansion. I've looked at the crafting order table several times and have not yet seen a treaty submitted for anybody. So currently I'm only really crafting treaties to level up my inscription or craft them for alts. And I think that partly you know, to me and probably to most of you, the price tag to craft these treaties is not much, like 2,000 gold. But I think that might be for some players a little bit too much for just like one knowledge point, and just feels not quite worth it. So if it, you know, over time we're going to see the price of crafting these come down, and we might start to see public crafting orders rise at that point. Vantis runes, obviously this is going to be a big one once the raid launches. Raid currently doesn't exist, so you know, I haven't even actually really looked at this Vantis rune to see if it's craftable or profitable if I crafted it, but I don't think it is going to be profitable. And I mean, just looking at it here, 70 gold. So this will obviously be something that I look a lot more closely at once the raid launches. So these are for the Dark Moon decks. I haven't really touched the Dark Moon decks, and I'm actually really happy about that. Looking at the auction house prices, they're already dirt cheap. So don't care about Dark Moon decks, and probably won't ever get into those. These sigils or sigils, whatever you want to call them, you know, to be totally honest, I have not really looked into these as well, but there's a high chance that I do start looking at crafting these at some point. Most likely not, though. I mean, these require Dark Moon decks, and so it's going to be kind of, I would imagine, same kind of knowledge point section for both the Dark Moon decks and the Dark Moon sigils. So probably won't focus on those entirely too much. I'm really more so of a reagent and commodity crafter than gear and that kind of thing. So we'll have to we'll see what happens with these down the road. Weapons, kind of the same story as earlier. Not going to be looking at those initially, so we're just going to move on. Contracts, I've already started farming out the reputation to be able to get all of these contracts. Thankfully, you don't need a high or a high renown in order to buy the contract recipes anymore. But it does require acuity, and currently I just have better uses for my Artisan's Acuity, and so I'm going to continue using that. Eventually I'll get the contract recipes, but probably not until I've gotten all of the 10 knowledge point books from the profession vendor, or the profession vendor, whatever you call it. All right, so profession missives are additionally another item that costs acuity to purchase, and so that's kind of the same story as the contracts. Once I've gotten past and bought all of the knowledge points with acuity, I will start purchasing recipes with acuity at that point. So we're just kind of a waiting game. Profession equipment, talked about this kind of already. I still actually need to learn a few different treaty recipes. And lastly, PvP gear. I do check the auction house occasionally just to see if the cost of their recipes has gotten to a point where I think it's worth it. I haven't found that to be the case yet. Looking at or clicking on some of these recipes, the profit seems pretty awesome. So I would definitely recommend keeping an eye on these Algary PvP recipes, and you might be able to make some pretty good money if you start getting those crafted. So moving on to specializations. So we'll kind of just start off with pursuit of knowledge. So this knowledge tree is pretty awesome. So putting points directly into pursuit of knowledge, you gain 3 ingenuity, 3 resourcefulness, and 3 multicraft per point. Not to mention that every 5 nodes, you gain an additional 15 of each of those tertiary stats. So this just kind of, beefs up your tertiary stats. Resourcefulness, multicraft, those are really the only 2 I care about, but ingenuity as well. So I've started dumping points into pursuit of knowledge, as well as multitasking, which is ultimately just multicraft, gives you additional multicraft. And then also when multicraft procs, you get, an additional, I think once you max out this tree, an additional 100% extra of the item from the multicraft. So I'm really trying to beef out my multicraft because ultimately I am a commodity reagent crafter. So multicraft is my bread and butter. So I've just been working on these. Once I'm done with these 2, then I'll start pumping points into resourcefulness and get that maxed out. Really don't need to worry about Eureka for the ingenuity. Obviously, if I eventually start doing profession equipment or crafting actual gear, then that would be relevant for me. But as of now, not really a big deal. Pursuit of perfection, is one that I will obviously be putting points into. Really, I would want to put points into pursuit of perfection specifically, and then into improved ciphers to increase the quality of the ciphers that I'm crafting. But that's something that I'm kind of, down the road going to be looking at. Careful carvings is just going to be your gear and profession equipment. So there is this combative curiosities, which I would imagine that will actually impact codified greenwood. Okay. It doesn't, which is actually really nice. So in Dragonflight, this knowledge point node in particular had an impact on Ruined Wraithbark, and so I assumed it did this time. But thank God it doesn't. So we just have, PV or actual combat gear over here, and then profession equipment on the right side. So Careful Carvings is probably going to be the last knowledge point tree that I go into in the War Within with this particular character. And then lastly, archival additions. So I maxed or started putting points into the main tree just to get the first sub spec unlocked. And then I got points into runic research, and then lastly, missives. Missives is something that I kind of just consistently sold throughout the entire expansion of Dragonflight, and I think it's going to be the exact same here. And I think that once Season 1 officially starts, the missive market's just going to grow. And so I kind of want to try to have, everything I can to capitalize on the missive market once Season 1 starts. So, really my plan right now is to max out multicraft so I can take the as much advantage of multicraft as possible. And then I want to get missive squared away. I want to get contracts so that I can have these reagents kind of churning nonstop. Then from there, I'm probably going to go into detail oriented to increase my resourcefulness. And then after that, I will most likely go into improved ciphers. And then I'll be pretty happy with where I'm at on this character. So beyond that, theoretically, I feel like I could just almost stop, trying to get knowledge points on this character and just craft, do knowledge points on other tunes, whatever. But if I do continue to farm knowledge points, then eventually I'll move into careful carvings and do gear crafting and profession equipment crafting. So yeah, that's kind of my plan for the War Within, at least with Inscription. So as I mentioned kind of at the beginning of the video, I did make one, the kind of the initial introduction of this series on jewel crafting. So that is on my YouTube channel. If you're curious, I will try to put a little card up on the top of the screen. What is it up there? It should pop up and let you, give you the option to click on that. But also I do stream pretty consistently, like almost every day. Twitch.tv/semicolon23. And also when I do stream, it does go live onto YouTube as well. So if you'd like, you can just subscribe on YouTube to see those streams, but also go follow my Twitch, because Twitch has drops. Like there's currently drops. And so there's some additional benefits for watching over there. So yeah, I hope you all found this video helpful. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully this gives you some insight as to what I'm doing and potentially gives you some direction on where you should go. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, and I will definitely get back to you. And you can also join my Discord and ask questions in there. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.